So outside that garage door, it's about 12 degrees. In here, after running the heater for about an hour, it is up to a balmy 38 degrees. So what's a garage gym owner to do, right? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today on the GymCrafter podcast. Welcome back to the GymCrafter podcast, everybody. My name is Tim. I am the head gym nerd here at GymCrafter.com, the website that I built to help ordinary folks like you and I build home and garage gyms that we absolutely love. And it is almost impossible to love your garage gym when you've got to dress like you're going sledding to work out, right? So today we are going to talk about what to do when it gets cold in your garage gym, because for the longest time, and I've had this gym I've lived in this house for 20 years and I've had some form of training out in this garage the entire time. Now, at first, I'd just go inside, right? There were quite a few years where I just didn't train in the garage in the wintertime. But over the last bunch of years, I've been able to be out here 5 to 6 days a week, every week of the year, regardless of the weather. So today, what I want to do is I want to share with you guys 27 tips on how to stay warm in your garage and actually enjoy working out in the wintertime. A lot of you garage gym veterans will know a lot of these. Hopefully I'll have something for everybody, but I know there's a lot of you guys out there who are just starting your garage gym journey, and this may be your first winter, and boy, that first winter can be overwhelming, especially when you grab a barbell and your hand sticks to it, right? By the way, like they say in A Christmas Story, don't stick your tongue to the frozen barbell. That's a bonus tip for you today. That's not one of the 27, but just in case, there's one for you. So that's what we're going to talk about today on the podcast. As usual, we're going to start with an update. And today I just want to touch on the app that I switched to for tracking my diet. As you guys know, I've been training to lose some weight. It's going very, very well. I'm really, really happy with how things are going. But recently, a few weeks ago, I changed the app that I was using. I was using an app called Carbon Diet Coach, which I actually enjoyed. I liked it a lot. It was very simple, very straightforward, but I wanted to try something that did a few things that Carbon wasn't doing. So I switched to an app called GymCrafter. And the last time I mentioned this on the podcast, I had a bunch of you guys reach out and say you've been using GymCrafter for years and love it. And I can see why. Now, big drawback to GymCrafter is there is a lot going on. For a not too technologically savvy person like myself, there are a lot of screens and menus and submenus, and I don't know that I'll ever be able to get the most out of this app just because I don't want to dig through all of those pages and things like that. That said, it does do everything that I was looking for, and it does some other stuff that I think is really cool. So let me just touch on what I really like about it and what's different than Carbon. First of all, GymCrafter actually, and oh, by the way, I'm not affiliated. I'm not telling you this to get you to sell you an app. I'm not even going to put a link below. I just want to tell you how it's working so that if you're looking for an app and you want something that works, I can give you some feedback on what I like and don't like about these. So what I like I said, is that it tracks your metabolism and it really adjusts based. If you log your weight and you are religious about logging your food every day, which if you guys haven't logged your food before, honestly, once you do it for a few weeks, it just becomes second nature. And what you'll find is most of us eat the same darn thing most days anyway, so it becomes pretty easy. But what it does is it actually adjusts for your daily calorie expenditure. And every week when you do your check-in, it'll actually adjust up and down. Now, what Carbon did is if you hit all your targets, it would make an adjustment. And basically what that told me was that it wasn't really all that smart. I mean, the advertising made it sound like it was smart, but it really wasn't all that smart. If you didn't lose enough weight, it told you to cut your calories. If you lost too much weight, it told you to raise your calories. But I don't think there was a whole lot of thinking there. And GymCrafter so far seems to be very intelligent about how it adjusts. And I don't need to hit my targets, right? Like if I overeat, like Thanksgiving, I definitely didn't eat almost 6,000 calories on Thanksgiving, but man, that was awesome. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. So it adjusts for that type of thing, which is great. It also tracks fiber, which I was really looking for. As I've said before, and I'll say a million more times, I tell all of my clients this. The three things that I think are most important to track are calories, protein, and fiber. If you get those three things right, do what you want with fat, do what you want with carbs, do what you want with, processed, not processed, natural, all that stuff. If you can get those three things right, everything else kind of falls in line. So I love that you can track fiber. And I also like that you can track just about any other macronutrient that you want. If you decide you want to keep track of iron, you can do that. If you want to keep track of magnesium, you can keep track of that. It's really, like I said, there's a lot of depth to it, which could be a drawback. But so far I like it. I don't want to spend too much time on that because I got 27 tips for you coming up. But it is a good app. I do like it. I'll keep giving you guys updates, and I continue to track my weight loss goals. Now, one thing I did want to mention as far as those of you looking to lose weight, there's going to come a point in your weight loss journey where the scale isn't doing what you want it to do. And I want to make sure that everybody's aware that the scale isn't the end all be all of your measurements. So there's been a couple of weeks where my weight has stayed the same, but there's three things that I look at. Number one, I look in the mirror, right? And if I can see a difference, and I'm getting to the point now where I went from kind of a blob to a little bit less of a blob to a little bit, you really can't see that difference all that much, but I'm getting to a point now where I can actually like see things happening that are pretty cool. I like it. So when you see things like that, I really don't care what the scale says. I know by looking at myself that I'm losing weight. Another thing is how my clothes fit. I'm wearing a brand new pair of blue jeans, which is awesome. Because I had, not only was I only able to wear one pair of my big boy blue jeans before, but I have now actually all of my blue jeans were a little bit loose. So I was able to go out and buy another pair of jeans. So that was nice. So the clothes are fitting a lot better. My shirts are fitting a little bit better. So that's really nice. And also, the way that I feel. So I take my dogs to the dog park almost every day, and our dog park, every time I say dog park, people think of these little AstroTurf corner patches. My dog park is 2 miles around the outside. It's got woods, it's got hills, it's got open fields, it's got giant trees. It's awesome, right? It's one of my favorite. Me and my dogs go there all the time, and I like running around in the woods with my dogs. So as I jump over logs, as I walk up these big giant downed trees, my little dog likes to climb stuff. So anyway, I feel great. Going up hills especially, what you'll notice is as you lose weight, you're gonna start to realize how much that extra weight was dragging you down, and that gives you more motivation to keep going, right? Those little bits of feeling better. But just because the scale didn't move, if you're continuing to feel better, what's probably happening is you might have dipped into this sweet spot where you're gaining a little bit of muscle and losing a little bit of fat, so the weight itself is staying the same, but you're getting stronger and lighter at the same time, and boy, that is a fun place to be. So I've been there a couple of weeks lately where the scale didn't move, but I still know I'm making progress. So in my usual long-winded way, that's my way of telling you that don't get discouraged if the scale isn't moving, if one or more of those other three things are moving in the right direction for you. So that's the diet update. Let's get to the heating tip because my ears are cold. I didn't want to wear a hat for this podcast because I know you guys like seeing the shine off a big bald head, but let's get into the tips for training in the winter. And I broke this down into a few sections. And those sections are prepping the garage itself, what type of a heater to use, there's a bunch of different devices there, some tips about the gear you use and how you treat your gear, and then also some training tips. So those are the 4 areas that I'm going to break things down into. Like I said, I've been doing this for a really long time. I've kind of every year I get a little bit better and figure out something new. So I've tried to put everything here. As I go through this, if you guys who are in some cold climates as well, I know that I had a comment from somebody who lives, I think he said several hundred miles north of Ontario, and he suggested a wood burning stove. So we've got some people out there training in the cold. And that's if you guys got those tips, definitely leave that in the comments so that it helps people out. And that particular person, there's a little bit of a pre-tip for you, which that person exemplifies, which is, as I always was told when I was a kid, trying to play sports, was sack up. Just suck it up, go outside, it's cold, no big deal, it's not gonna kill you, so you're cold, so what? Just deal with it, right? And I know that that's something that there's a mental aspect to it of you can't just expect your gym to be perfect all the time. And some days it's just gonna be cold. You know, every year here in Chicago, we get a snap that goes down well below 0. This garage does not get out of the 20s, maybe the low 30s if I let the heater run for a while. And that doesn't mean that I don't work out, right? So I'll use these other tips to help me out. But at some point, you just gotta kind of man up and get out there and get out in the gym. And I'm not sure what the appropriate term is for the women that are watching this, but man up, women. Get out in the gym and train. Actually, the women are usually probably tougher than most of the men that I know. So I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about the guys inside going, it's cold. But anyway, the second tip before we get into the specifics is make sure you warm up. There's a couple of things. Now, I play some outdoor sports. I play disc golf all year long. And in fact, I had leagues this morning. It was negative wind chills. It was probably 10 degrees or so, plus the wind chill. It was brutal, right? Really bad when you first get out there, but once you get going and once you get playing, it's fine. I had my gloves off, I didn't have my hat on, and it was fine. So same thing, I was a skier for a long time. I'm from Colorado originally, which is one of the reasons I like Rep, is because they're based in Colorado. And when you're skiing, it's pretty cool. Those of you guys who ski can relate. There's these little lodges like up in the mountains that you kind of ski into. And boy, if you've been skiing for a while and really working hard and you ski into one of those, it's cool because they have these outdoor areas where you eat and drink, and everybody will be outside having their lunch, outside having their hot cocoa or coffee. And it could be like 8 degrees and nobody cares. Everybody's got their hat off and their gloves off and everybody's super comfortable because they're warmed up. And that is just a good tip. I know that's something that everybody knows, but make sure that you warm up. make sure that you suck it up, and then use these other tips, and hopefully everything together will get you an enjoyable time in your garage. So let's look at the first section, which is preparing the garage itself. And one of the best things that you can do for your garage gym is to install rubber flooring. And if you can install rubber flooring across the entire garage, yes, you can park on stall mats. Yes, you can park on installed rubber flooring if you park your car in here. At the very least, get rubber underneath where you train. That rubber acts as a great insulating agent, and I cannot tell you the difference between training in a garage that just has a bare cement floor or even like carpet or something like that versus having rubber flooring. Rubber flooring makes a gigantic difference. If you don't have rubber flooring, see my guy Ashton down at Freedom Fitness. I'll put a link down below along with the coupon code for saving money. He has the best deals on flooring in the country, and you can get some blemished flooring for about the same price as you get stall mats for. I get a much better floor for your gym, but get yourself a rubber floor. Another thing that I try and do, and I know not everybody can do this. Now, I live in a townhouse, so I have a front door in the front of my house, and then I have the garage door back here. If I know that I'm going to be training, I don't come and go through my garage door. I'll actually go out of the front door, walk around to my car if I have to use the car. And then, like when I went this morning to play disc golf, I walked out the front, locked the door, took the car, parked, walked back in the front door, and then that way, because opening that big front door, that doesn't matter how good a floor you have or what else you do. If you're just going to let in the 8-degree weather, you're done. Now, that's not something that that's kind of a no-brainer. But I know some of you live with lots of people in the family, but just maybe make an arrangement with them. Hey, I've got to work out at such and such a time. Can we maybe not go in and out of that garage door before that time? That makes a huge difference, because once that cold air is in here and everything gets cold, it's bad. And the reason I brought that up is what you have to understand is not only are you letting in the cold, what happens is every single metal piece of gear that you have, which is almost everything we have, right, soaks up that cold and then radiates the cold. So it's like putting a bunch of ice cubes in your garage, and you've just made yourself a nice, like a cooler almost, where everything that's metal, your rack and your bars and your kettlebells and your dumbbells, those things are all just radiating cold, and it makes it so much harder to get everything warmed up if you're using a heater or something like that. So try to keep that door closed, and try to keep your metal implements from getting as cold as they do when that door goes open. Speaking of that door, insulate the door. Now, I have a video on insulating your door. I've insulated my door 3 different times. So number one, best way to do it, my brother did this. He's got an insulated door. He had a garage door company come out, install an insulated door. It was stupid expensive, not something A, I can afford to do, or B, am I allowed to do, because I live in a townhouse and you have to have a certain kind of door. Those of you guys who live in a townhouse can understand what my frustration is there, but insulate your door. Now, what I did was, first thing I did was I went and got just some insulation panels, and I cut them, just foam panels, and I shoved them in there. That worked okay. The next thing I did was I bought a kit, and this kit had this white, it's like white packing styrofoam, and you'll find these on Amazon. And I kind of tried to, I tell you what, I broke more of those panels that I got installed. Those are extraordinarily hard to install. Not to mention the R value, or how much they insulate, isn't as good as what I've got in here now. Now, I'll link up above and down below. I did, of course, make a video on how to insulate your garage door in the wintertime. It's a few years old, but the kit that I recommend is still the same. So I'll link that video and the kit. It's an Owens Corning kit. It's soft fiberglass insulation. It literally just tucks into the panels of your garage doors. There's these 2 little plastic pegs that hold them in place. You'll see a lot of people online tell you need to duct tape them in. I've had mine in for a bunch of years, and it's still in perfect condition. And it makes, I measured it, it's between, depending on how cold it is outside, it makes between a 10 and 20 degree difference in my garage between when I didn't have that and when I had it. And it's not that expensive. It's one of the best things that you can do. Another thing you want to do for your door is underneath the door, and then if you look on the outside of your garage door, there is a seal. There's a seal around the outside, and then there's a seal underneath. Check the seal underneath. If you've had your garage door for more than even a year, the seal is this round plastic stuff. And what happens is, as the door closes, it smushes down, and it's supposed to kind of expand out to fill that gap. But what happens, especially in the wintertime, when that plastic gets stiff, is it gets flattened and it doesn't expand back out. And the older it is, the more gaps you'll have underneath. So if you can go into your garage with the lights off and see daylight under your door, you got to fix that. That all of your heat is just zooming out from underneath your door. The same thing if you see light around the sides or top, that seal on the outside. Now, that's a little bit harder to replace. I might pay a garage door person to do that, although I do know people who have done that themselves. And just fixing that seal on your door is a game changer for keeping your garage warm. You might be surprised at just how much of a difference just that bottom seal makes. The next one is windows. Now, I don't have windows in here, but my dad, and I'll tell a couple stories about him during this podcast, is a remote control airplane guy. Mom never wanted him building his airplanes in the house, so he was always stuck in the garage. He is kind of a dork for this stuff. He likes airplanes as much as I like barbells, if that tells you anything. So he'd be out there in like a full Carhartt, jumpsuit with gloves and mittens, and so he's serious about it. So he worked out, he didn't train, he built airplanes right in front of a window, and every year he would put up a couple of layers of that 3M window film, and even though it's thin plastic, that makes a huge difference. And speaking of that, I know one year it got really cold, and when I was a kid, it definitely got colder than it does now. And what he would do is he would actually put up, he would get this real thick plastic sheeting. And the first year he did it, he just hung it from the ceiling joists and kind of enclosed the area where he worked on his planes. There's a little workbench at the front of the garage. And he would just enclose the area, get his little space heater going, which we'll talk about heaters in a second. But that would keep the heat in, keep the cold out. And I know the second year what he did was he built like just a rudimentary 2x4 framing that went around, and he would put that up in a day and then staple that plastic to it. Just that little bit of plastic, it made a huge, huge difference. He went from having to work to train, man, he wasn't working outdoor training. He went from building his airplanes in the Carhartt suit to just out there in jeans and a sweatshirt. So it really makes a big difference. So for those of you who have to share the garage with other people, if you take your training area and you segregate it from the rest of the garage with some thick plastic sheeting, you can get it at the hardware store. It's not super expensive. But man, that goes a long way. If you combine that with a heater on the inside, that plastic will keep the heat inside instead of the heat kind of evaporating out the walls and things like that. So that was something that's worked really well. I've never had to do that in here because I'm fortunate that I don't have to share my garage with anybody, but I know a lot of you guys do. So that's a great tip for you. And the last thing I'll tell you about insulating, because we could spend a whole Bob Vila segment on insulating your garage. Come out into your garage and light a candle and walk around your garage and watch for where the drafts are. Wherever that candle starts blowing, you've got a leak there. The more of those leaks you can plug, the better off you are, because what happens is the heat just wants to go outside through any hole or opening or crack or crevice that you've got. And you might be surprised at all the different places. Like what I found is around my outlets, there was just a draft. There's literally cold air flowing in from the outlets. So what I did was I took the faceplate off, I insulated behind it back there, and then put the faceplate back on. Make sure that you consult an electrician. I did talk to one of my buddies. There's a special kind of stuff you've got to use back there. You don't want to use anything that's flammable. And I forget, he gave me the stuff to use. But anyway, look for areas where that candle's blowing, and that will definitely help you out to identify where you're losing heat in your garage. So once you have the flooring, the door, the insulation, all of that stuff taken care of, now we've got to put a heat source, because most of us don't have a heat source in our garage. If you've got heat in your garage, you're not watching this episode, right? So if you don't have heat, you've got to get heat into the garage. Now, I actually went out a couple years ago and I bought every electric space heater I can get my hands on. I wrote an article, it's on the website. I tested every one. I spent days measuring how quickly it took to make different temperature increases. Now, kind of no fair on my part, because being that I live in a townhouse, I have neighbors on either side, so the only wall that I have that's exposed to the outside is the front wall. I know some of you guys out there are struggling with detached garages, or you have a standalone garage that's open on all sides. And I just want to give you a caveat to heaters right up front. Electric heaters, there's only so much they can do, guys. Even the ones that I recommended, which I know do a decent job, or at least as good a job that can be done out of all the ones that are available. They can't do everything. They're not a magic bullet. And sometimes it's like peeing in the wind, right? It's not going to make a difference. So just kind of evaluate where you're at. Now, it's better than nothing. Even if I was in those situations, I might work out with my heater just blowing right on me. A lot of the good heaters have fans in them, so at least you can get the air blowing on you. You can set it up to blow on your barbells. You can use it a little bit, but don't expect too much. And to address that, I want to talk about two other types of heaters real quick. First of all is a gas-powered forced air heater, and those are typically by a company called Resner. There's a bunch of other ones you can buy. I'll link a couple of them down below. But you basically mount those in the corner of your garage. You typically mount them up high. You run a natural gas line to them. And they're for, if you've ever been in an auto shop or an auto body shop or a metalworking shop or something like that. A lot of the shops have, so all you blue collar guys out there with jobs like this, machinists and things like that, you know what I'm talking about. They do an awesome job. They will heat your garage like bam, your garage is hot. They will also make you spend your next several mortgages on your gas bill. So make sure if you decide to put one of those in, and this is why I don't have one. I could have one. I got an estimate. My gas line is right where it would be installed. But when I started looking at the energy usage and how much it would cost me to run this thing for the couple hours I'm out here every day, it just didn't make, the cost benefit wasn't there. So just be careful. If you value your warmth more than your money, then yeah, they're great. But that is probably your best overall garage heating solution. There's a middle avenue though, between the electric heater, which is probably your least effective, and the gas heater I just talked about. You can use an LP or a kerosene heater. Now this is something my dad has always used. We lived in Okinawa, Japan for a while, and in Okinawa, Japan, it's a tropical climate, so there's no heaters in the houses, right? There's just none. I know a lot of houses in Florida don't have heaters either, so you guys know what I'm talking about, but every once in a while it gets cold. Well, it would still get cold in the wintertime in Japan, so we would have to break out the kerosene heaters, and I think my dad still has one. This is from 40 plus years ago, almost 50 years ago. These are great. You fill them up with kerosene, they light up, they're super warm, there's a fan in them, they work great, they don't require power. Everything runs off the kerosene, so those are great. The reason I don't have one is I have a fear of carbon monoxide poisoning, and I know that there's a big reason why when you go to the heater aisle in most and I know these are even illegal in some states, so be careful if you go this route, but they do work really, really well. So if you can be careful, if you can trust, they're supposed to be safe, right? But I just don't trust them. So it hasn't killed my dad yet, so maybe that's just on me. He also uses an LP heater, and basically what an LP heater is you take an LP tank like you'd use for your grill, and it screws onto the top, and there's a little click lighter on it, and it just, the gas is forced out and it burns, and man, these things work great too. Again, I worry about carbon monoxide, so please be careful. If I had one of these, I would for sure put a carbon monoxide sensor in my garage. I'm sure that there's going to be people in the comments going, don't use those, there's danger. I'm telling you right now, I don't use them, but I know people who use them. I know people who love them. You got to be careful. Also, these are ones that are fire hazards. The electric heaters, there's about 1,000,001 different safety functions built in. They won't run too long. If they tip over, they go off. There's sensors all over the place. So the electric heater at this point are pretty safe. They didn't used to be. Back when I was a kid, electric heaters, they were these metal boxes with these metal bands that stretched back and forth, and it would run electricity through the band until the band got so hot that the metal glowed. And it is as much of a danger and fire hazard as you are imagining right now. All the folks my age absolutely know the heaters I'm talking about, and those were fire hazards. Lots of houses burned down because of those. So don't use one of those if you find one at a garage sale. But in the end, be careful with heaters. There's a few different varieties of heaters. Don't expect too much from your heater. But I couldn't do what I do out here and spend as much time as I do out here without having a heater. So a heater's a big part of my arsenal. And a couple of other tips about heaters. Number one, turn yours on. I'd like to do is when it's real cold like this, I'll turn mine on about an hour before I come out here. Now, I will tell you, we talked about the gas heater using too much gas and costing a lot of money. The electric heaters, they will be noticeable on your electric bill. So again, if you're watching your pennies and you don't want to run up your electric bill, an electric heater may not be the most ideal solution for you, especially turning it on an hour early. But I found that if I can get out here, mine's got a remote, so I just kind of reach my hand through and zap it with the remote and turn it on. It's got a thermostat, so I've got it set to 68 degrees. It'll never get to 68. So, but it heats up and it keeps going. So that's nice. Now, one of the heaters that I recommend in this article, it's one of the top rated heaters, is there are some that are smart heaters now where you can just tell it, hey, I know I work out at 8 a.m. every day, so go on at 7 and go to this temperature and then turn off at this certain time. So those are nice. If you're out of your house and you know you're going to be spending some time in your garage, you can just go on your phone and turn those on. So there's a couple of other tips that are heater specific that will help you get the most out of your heaters. And then the last heater that a lot of people don't think about, or maybe you do, is, again, I live by myself. So if I didn't live by myself, this tip would not fly. I'm just gonna tell you that right now. But because my garage is attached, I not only turn my heater on an hour before, I open the door between my house and the garage, and I let the furnace in the house kind of go on as the hot air from the house comes into the garage. And I'll tell you what, that really makes a difference. Now, when I was living with somebody here, she would not have let me do that because she got cold all the time. And as soon as this door opened up, she'd be like, close the door. Again, wouldn't work for some people, but for those of you who wouldn't mind that, that is a really good way to get your garage heated up pretty quickly, is to open that door. So that's something that I typically do a lot, is I'll open that door, turn on my space heater, come in here in 45 minutes to an hour, and away I go. So that's the section on heaters. Hopefully that helps you out. If you got questions, like I said, I'll post the link to the heater article down below so you can check that out. And then also the videos to insulating your door and whatever else I can find. That I've made a lot of videos on making your garage comfortable, so I'll make sure and link those down below as well. So what about your gear? Is there something you can do with your gear that will make working out in the winter more enjoyable? And the answer is yes, because probably the worst part for me about training in the wintertime when it's cold in the garage is grabbing these guys. Like even right now, man, that is cold, right? And when you're trying to work out and your barbell, and if you got a good solid barbell, it's not going to warm up real quick, right? You can hang on to it for a while. It's going to freeze your hand before you warm up that bar. The pull-up bars, the attachments for your cable machine, the handles to your dumbbells. If you've got metal plates, boy, those iron metal plates are brutal in the wintertime. And then my favorite, one of the reasons you don't see metal plates in here, is you slide that metal plate on in the winter and your fingers are frozen and you pinch your finger between the two metal plates, and that could possibly be some of the worst pain I've ever experienced in a gym, and I would do that multiple times. Now, AbMat makes these things called plate spacers, so if you are using metal plates, wintertime or otherwise, put a link below. AbMat plate spacers, money, right? Those things will help you out a lot. But anyway, you want to avoid touching metal as much as possible. But that's not always something that you can do, right? So I've come up with some strategies and some things that I do just kind of second nature now that really help with this. And the first one is fat grips. Now, fat grips are one of my favorite lifting accessories. If you don't know what fat grips are, they are these rubber sleeves that you put over your barbell that can change the diameter of your bar. They make 3 or 4 different sizes. I have their regular ones, and then I have what they call Fat Grips ones. Fat Grips ones are their smallest diameter, and they make your barbell about the same size as an axle bar. So that's why I bought them initially. The other nice thing is they're rubber. So I use Fat Grips ones on almost all barbell work, and if I had fixed dumbbells, I would use them on my dumbbells as well. If I had like the rep-ins, for example, I would use these on the rep-ins for sure. And by changing the place where you touch to rubber instead of metal, it just makes a world of difference. And I like working out with the fatter bar. It definitely shows you some benefit. It mixes up your training in the wintertime, but it will absolutely help you keep your hands warmer by allowing you not to touch metal on either barbell or dumbbells. Another thing that I would recommend is your cable attachments. If you spend a bunch of money on nice knurled metal cable attachments, switch to some rubber handles just for the winter or just for the cold weather. And I've got another solution for you if you don't want to give up your metal in just a second. But if you can switch those things to rubber as well. I also use my Fat Grips on my pull-up bar. You just got to turn them upside down. And those work great on the pull-up bar as well. So again, not touching metal is basically the moral of that story. The last thing that I like to do is, recently on you guys' recommendation, I bought some knurled handle inserts to my power blocks, and those get cold. So I took them out and I put the original rubber ones back in, and my power blocks, actually, one of the benefits to the rubber handles and the power blocks, I never even realized until this year when I upgraded those handles, that the metal handles get cold. So I really actually prefer the rubber handles for about half the year. And speaking of dumbbells, one of the things I've been looking at buying recently are what are called the Silverback dumbbells by Fringe Sport. They are a molded rubber dumbbell all the way across. They've got these really cool knurled metal. I saw them at Home Gym Con last year. They're knurled rubber handles. You'd think that sounds weird, right? But they're knurled, really good knurl, holds chalk well, feels really good, but the whole thing is rubber. So really cool dumbbells. They're green, they have monkeys on them. They have lots of good things about them that probably will make them end up in my gym at some point. But that's another solution, is to just you can even get fixed dumbbells with rubber handles if you're concerned about it. Or if you live in those cold climates in northern Canada like that, those might be a good solution for you. Going back to those metal plates, this is a big reason, like I said, that I don't have metal plates. I have bumper plates. Bumper plates typically don't get too cold in the wintertime, so I don't usually have an issue. I also have some rubber coated plates and some urethane coated plates in here. All of those work pretty well. Bumper plates stay the warmest of all of them. What I've noticed is that the rubber coated plates, they still get pretty cold because there's not a ton of rubber over the metal underneath. And then the urethane coated plates are pretty good because they're a little bit more, but both of those definitely get colder than the bumper plates. But having a set of bumper plates that you can use in the winter. I like having a mix of those plates, so that's something that I think a lot of garage gyms could benefit from, is having a mix of different type of plates. And if you throw some bumper plates in the mix, that will keep your hands warm. And then obviously you could wear gloves. Just wear winter gloves and not lifting gloves. Just wear the gloves to set up your bar and then lift with your hands like a real person. And the last tip I've got for keeping your stuff warm, if none of that other stuff works for you, what I used to do is I used to take, actually two more tips. Number one, just bring the stuff inside. So it is not uncommon for you to see in my dining room, which is right on the other side of this door right here, to see a barbell or two leaning up in the corner, and then my cable attachments sitting over there, and then the kettlebell that I'm going to use that day. Whatever I'm going to use that day, what I'll do is I'll bring it in the night before and I'll let it sit in the house so that it just doesn't get cold to start with. That's probably the easiest way to do it without messing around with all different kinds of things and hacks and grips and things like that. But that's something you can do. If you got a detached garage, this doesn't work as well as if you've got an attached garage. But that is one thing. And then one thing that I do want to bring up, because I still do this occasionally, but boy, this used to be my go-to. I thought I was so clever when I thought of this. It's not that clever, but it does work, is hand warmers. I would take hand warmers, they typically come in pairs, you open them up, and I would shake them up and get them all nice and warm, and then I would put them on the barbell where I was going to grip the barbell, and then I would do my accessory work and warm up work, and then I would do my barbell work, and I would warm up those spots with the hand warmers. So that actually worked pretty well, but it's pretty inefficient and doesn't work as well as the other things that I've talked about. But just to get to 27 tips. So that's another one for you. And the last section I have are some training tips. Just how you train in the winter may just need to be different than how you train in the summer, right? So there's a few things that I change up in my training in the wintertime, or that I help my clients change up who train at home. And this really seems to help. Number one is, if you're used to training a body part split and you're in the garage every day, try switching to a full body, maybe 3 days a week. And then what that allows you to do is you're not going to miss any body parts. But if it's just super cold, because typically those cold snaps only last a couple of days, you can shift one of your training days forward or backward and shift around the weather, still get every body part hit the right number of times a week. And it allows you to miss those super cold days. So if you just can't be if you live in an area or you have a garage where there's just some days where no matter what you do, you just can't be out there, then go ahead and go to a full body training setup and then go to training on days where it's not that cold and you can be out in your garage, and that works pretty well. Another option is to, instead of going, what I've had is some people who normally do the full body training days are just like, I can't, to get I don't care what most people say, to get an effective full body training workout, honestly, it takes you an hour to an hour and a half minimum. And sometimes that's just a lot to be out in your cold garages. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll switch people to like a 15 or 20 minute a day training system that's 5-6 days a week. If that sounds interesting to you because of schedule, or because 15 minutes is all you're gonna stomach in your cold garage every day, then MAPS 15, I'll put a link below, is a program that I base all my programming off of. It's got a 15 minute a day and a 20 minute a day programming. It's from the guys over in the Mind Pump podcast. As you guys know, I do like their programs. And that is a good model to go after that'll get you in and out of your cold garage quickly, so that you only have to suck it up for 15 minutes instead of an hour to an hour and a half. And that brings us to our last two. Number one, which I know guys who lift weights don't want to hear, start your day with some cardio. Start with a good jump rope, start with some work on the heavy bag, start on your rower, start on your air bike, start on your treadmill. Just like I said at the beginning about getting warmed up when you're skiing or when you're outside doing activities in the wintertime, just start with some cardio and get that core body temperature up. Once your core body temperature gets up, what happens, the reason why your hands start to freeze is your body, when it gets cold, it pulls the blood out of your extremities and centralizes it around your vital organs, right? Because it wants your heart to stay warm. It wants your lungs and your kidney and your digestive tract. It wants this part of your body to stay warm. It doesn't care if your fingers freeze and fall off. So what happens is your hands get cold first, your toes get cold first. Well, if you warm yourself up with cardio, what happens is your core temperature rises and it tells your body, hey, get some of that nice warm blood back pumping out into your fingers and your toes. That's why when you warm up, when you're skiing and things like that, this all of a sudden doesn't need the blood, and the blood goes back to your hands and your hands are warm again because there's nice warm blood flowing through them. So that's a good way to do things, is to start with some cardio, and that's why that works. The last one is stay active during your rest periods. This was a big one for me. I'm a huge advocate of strict rest periods. So I don't do social media on my rest periods. I don't watch YouTube on my rest periods. I time my rest periods, and during my rest periods, I'm a big dork. I think about the next set. the form, the technique, what I do wrong on the last set, what I'm going to focus on, what weight I'm going to use. And I spend that time mentally preparing for the next set. But I'm very strict on my times. So what I would do is I would just normally sit down and do that. Well, this time of year, what I like to do is I'll actually jump on like a rower, or I'll jump on, I've got a jump rope out here, which I like to do a lot. Just something like that to keep myself warm between sets. And again, it keeps that core temperature up, and it keeps the blood flowing, and it keeps you able to continue to work out and to be able to finish your workout. So that are all my tips. Now, what did I miss, guys? Because I know there's a lot of you garage gym veterans out there who are going, hey, you missed this, you missed that, or this tip was dumb, do this instead. Look, guys, I love the comment section down below. You guys are awesome. Most of you post really good comments. So if you've got a good tip for people training in their garage, let's help everybody continue to train. Consistency is the key, guys. You can't skip because it got cold, right? Because as you guys know, you skip one day because it's cold, and the next day you're like, well, I skipped yesterday, I might as well skip today. And before you know it, you're detrained. It's the holidays, you've eaten all kinds of pie, you've had 6,000 calorie Thanksgiving dinners. And yeah, so just keep everybody in the gym, give everybody some help, post those comments down below. And as usual, thank you guys for watching this far. I really appreciate it. If you liked the video, hit that like button. If you didn't like the video, I appreciate you watching this far. And that's it for this podcast. Until the next one, I am Tim with GymCrafter.